Savannah heat lay thick and heavy, the kind that usually promised lazy afternoons. But this particular Tuesday held no promise for me. Its date had been circled in red on the family calendar for weeks. Family meeting. 7 p.m. The Cedars. My mother's summons had been velvet-wrapped steel, polite and utterly non-negotiable. I knew the drill. The vultures were finally gathering for a formal feast. My old Subaru's tires crunched over the familiar oyster shell driveway of my parents' estate. I parked beside the gleaming black Range Rover belonging to my brother-in-law, Connor. Of course. Poetic, really. A quick glance at my phone. 6:57 p.m. 3 new texts from Bianca, my realtor. All clear for tomorrow. Closing at 9 a.m. sharp. Congrats, Tiffany. A slow smile touched my lips. I tucked the phone away, my secret talisman, and approached the grand front door. I'd once sprinted up these very steps barefoot, grass-stained and laughing. Tonight, I didn't get the chance to knock. The door swung open. There she stood, Kimberly Carter. My mother. Impeccable, arctic, her gaze performing a swift, surgical audit of my simple cotton dress and leather sandals. A problem to be solved. "You're cutting it close," was her greeting. "And a good evening to you too, Mother," I replied, stepping past her. The scene in the living room was a staged tableau of family life. My father was absorbed in a financial magazine, the TV droning with market analysis. Connor held court on the central sofa, limbs arrogantly sprawled. His wife, Paige, perched beside him, offering a thin, vacant smile in my general direction. "Didn't think you'd show," Connor grunted, not bothering to sit up. I selected a stiff, upright chair, the one positioned directly opposite the sofa, facing them all. The defendant's dock. My mother moved to the center of the Persian rug, a general addressing her troops. "Now that we're all here," she began, her voice cool and clear, "we need to discuss the situation." That word. Situation. In the Carter family lexicon, it was the designated term for my greatest transgression, leaving a prestigious, safe career at the firm to chase the absurd fantasy of my own business. My failure was their recurring scandal. "We understood you needed to get this out of your system," Mom continued, her tone one of profound patience. "But enough is enough, Brittany. It's gone on too long. You're causing talk. You're embarrassing the family." I kept my expression smooth, a blank page. In this room, emotion was a currency spent only by the weak. "The Heritage Gala is in 3 weeks, Paige chimed in, her voice syrupy with false concern. "People keep asking what you're doing now. It's so awkward to explain you're living in some tiny apartment and driving that car." She gave a delicate shudder. Connor nodded, crossing his arms. "Image matters, Britt. You used to know that. We've been over this ground," my mother said, her posture rigid. "It's time to end this charade and come back to reality. Your father was kind enough to reach out to his contacts at Old Spring Capital. They're willing to overlook this gap in your resume. You can start in August." My father turned a page of his magazine, a silent endorsement. "And we've found you a lovely apartment in the historic district," Mom pressed on. "A proper address. Far more suitable than that walk-up." She paused, letting the offer hang. "Eric Lambert is back in town," Paige added, a sly curve on her lips. "I heard he's asking about you. Said he'd love to reconnect." Eric. The memory was bitter. The one who'd begged me for seed money for his groundbreaking NFT venture. I'd declined. His empire of pixels had collapsed within 6 months. My mother's polished heel tapped once, sharply, on the hardwood. "Well, do you have anything to say for yourself?" I drew a breath, the words of quiet defiance finally on my tongue. But before I could speak, my phone hummed in my bag. The caller ID read, "Marcus Reynolds, ESQ my attorney." A strange calm settled over me. "You'll have to excuse me," I said, my voice eerily steady. "I need to take this." I swiped to answer and placed the phone on the coffee table. "Speaker on. Carter here." Marcus's voice, crisp and professional, filled the opulent room. "Brittany. Calling as promised to confirm. The Agglethorpe Properties acquisition is complete. All documents are filed. You are now the sole legal owner of the entire Agglethorpe complex. All 300 units, including the penthouse residence, are titled solely to you. We can begin implementing the new lease structures at your discretion." The silence that followed was absolute, profound, and utterly priceless. Paige's hand flew to her mouth. Connor's arrogant sprawl stiffened into shocked rigidity. My father's magazine slipped, forgotten, to his lap as he peered over his glasses. My mother's perfect complexion drained of all color, leaving her looking strangely fragile. But she finally whispered, the sound paper-thin. "We live there." I leaned forward slightly, capturing every stunned face in my gaze. "I know," I said, my tone as calm as the eye of a hurricane. "And now it belongs to me. While you all were so sure I was drowning, I was learning to build a ship. While you, Mother, lamented my thriftiness, I was acquiring equity. While my hobby was a family joke, I was quietly building a property portfolio across Savannah." I let the weight of it press down on them. "Oglethorpe isn't my salvation. It's my victory lap." "But that's worth millions," Paige whispered, her voice a fragile thread in the thick silence. "It's amusing," I said, rising to my feet, "what a modest lifestyle can conceal. How actual means can quietly eclipse assumed ones." I addressed the phone on the table. "Marcus, hold the lease adjustments for now. We'll strategize renovations tomorrow." "Understood, Ms. Carter." "My congratulations, once more." The call ended with a soft click. The quiet in the room was now a tangible thing, heavy with shattered assumptions. I smoothed the front of my simple dress, a deliberate gesture. "Regarding the gala," I said, my tone conversational, "I've reconsidered. As the new owner of the host venue's residence, my attendance seems not just appropriate, but necessary." My mother didn't just sit in my father's armchair. She melted into it, her rigid poise dissolving into stunned bewilderment. "Brittany," she breathed, "I don't understand." "I know, Mother," I replied, my voice softer now, but no less firm. "You never truly tried to. And that is precisely the root of all this." I collected my bag, its leather worn and familiar. "That shoebox apartment you deride? I own the entire building. And, for the record, most of the block it sits on." Their faces were portraits in shock, frozen in the gilded frame of their own living room. I didn't wait for the ice to crack. My heels echoed with finality on the marble floor of the foyer, each step a punctuation mark on my exit. "Brittany, wait." My father's call followed me out, a note of unfamiliar urgency in his voice. I didn't pause. The door of my faithful, dented Subaru closed with a solid thunk. As the engine turned over, a genuine, unfettered smile spread across my face. The best revenge isn't always loud or messy. Sometimes, it's the serene success that arrives without fanfare, the triumph that slips in silently, right under their noses. Dawn the next morning broke clear and generous over Savannah, painting the sky in strokes of gold and peach. My view was no longer from a modest window, but from the apex of Carter Square, the tower whose top floor now served as my command center. I sipped rich, black coffee as Martha, my impeccably efficient assistant, laid a folder on the vast desk. "Your mother has called 6 times, she reported, her voice neutral. "Your sister, Marilyn, 4. "Your father's office is requesting a lunch scheduling." "Let the calls go to voicemail," I said, gazing at the waking city. "Allow the silence to breathe for a while. Let them sit with it. They're insisting on an explanation," Martha noted. The phrase, "we're family," has been deployed multiple times. A faint, humorless smile touched my lips. They operate under a flawed definition. In their dictionary, family is a claim they make only when they require something. A polite knock at the door. "Miss Carter, the Downtown Development Council is assembled." I stood, straightening the lines of my charcoal gray blazer, tailored, severe, and silently expensive. I had no need for gaudy logos. My authority was established by the very fact that this meeting was being held in a building I owned. My entrance into the boardroom acted as a conversational guillotine. 12 faces, all belonging to Savannah's established patriarchs of development, swiveled toward me. Once, I had been a curiosity at this table, the Carter girl dabbling in real estate. Now, their gazes held a new calculus, assessment, wariness, respect. I was no longer a novelty, I was a contender. "Gentlemen," I said, taking the seat at the head of the long, polished table. "Shall we design the future?" 2 hours later, the future had signatures on it, 3 major contracts that would reshape key city blocks. I exited not merely with paperwork, but with something more valuable: conceded influence. Marcus fell into step beside me in the corridor. "I received an inquiry," he said, choosing his words with care. "From your father's firm. They're expressing keen interest in participating in the Riverside Revitalization Project." I didn't break stride. "Naturally, they are. Riverside will redefine the city's North Bank. Your instructions? The same as for any other firm. All proposals must be submitted through the official portal. No special lanes. No familial shortcuts." He nodded. "There's another matter. Your brother-in-law, Connor. He's been making rather frantic inquiries all over town. He seems desperate to map the extent of your holdings." I paused by a floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the tapestry of rooftops, streets, and the distant curl of the river. A significant portion of the view, they didn't know, was already mine. "He can dig all he wants, Marcus. He will only uncover what I've already decided is visible." By noon, my phone was a pulsating hive of digital anxiety, over 30 missed calls, a scrolling cascade of pleading and demanding texts. Among the noise, one email stood out, forwarded from a discreet monitoring service. It was from Connor to his business partner, Priority: "Find any dirt on Brittany Carter's LLCs, tax irregularities, shady partners, anything. I don't care how deep you have to look." I forwarded it to my legal counsel with a single note: "File this." Awaiting their next move. The game was turning, and they were about to learn I played it better. At 1:57 p.m., a text arrived from my sister, Marilyn, its tone a blend of command and panic: "Family dinner. Tonight. 7 p.m. You will be here. Period." My reply was instantaneous: "Conflict. Board meeting for the new project. Non-negotiable. Period." The truth was, my evening involved a board of one: Jeffrey Whitmore. The legendary developer, the elusive kingmaker my mother had spent decades trying to court for a mere photo op. My dinner with him wasn't an obligation, it was a strategy session. If you've ever been meticulously underestimated by the very people who swore they knew you best, then you understand the quiet fire now burning in Brittany Carter's wake. This is not an ending. It is a genesis. Stay tuned. The family dinner is over. The Real board meeting is about to begin. The restaurant was a sanctuary of hushed power, where the lighting was flattering and the menus were devoid of prices. An unspoken rule hung in the air: if you needed to ask, you had already failed the entrance exam. Jeffrey Whitmore was already at his usual corner table, a man so established he seemed carved from the city's oldest oak. He rose as I approached, a gesture of respect that was both genuine and calculated. "Brittany," he said, his voice a low rumble of warmth. "I've been anticipating this. It's a rare thing to watch an empire being built without hearing the construction noise." I accepted the wine list from the sommelier with a nod. The strongest foundations, after all, are poured in silence. He appraised me over the rim of his water glass. "Your family appears to be in a state of profound recalibration. My son Connor, in particular, is obsessed with reverse engineering your success. He's making quite the spectacle of himself." "Yes," I replied, handing the list back, my choice made. I was under the impression his expertise lay in the art of the loss, particularly on over-leveraged flips in trendy zip codes. A moment passed, then Jeffrey released a short, genuine bark of laughter. It was the sound of a man unaccustomed to being spoken to without the filter of sycophancy. The sommelier presented the wine, a Bordeaux so deep it was nearly black. "Substantial. Enduring." Jeffrey raised his glass. "To new partnerships." I met his toast, but not his assumption. "That depends entirely on the architecture of the partnership, Jeffrey. Shall we lay the first blueprint? I'm ready to discuss the Marina District." His eyebrow, a slash of gray, lifted in surprise. Then, appreciation. "You've done more than your homework. My business is seeing the stress fractures others glide over. For example, that urgent financing gap created by the surprise environmental findings on your south parcel. I have a capital structure that can bridge it. For the next 2 hours, we engaged in a pure, unadulterated dialectic of strategy. No gossip, no posturing, just the clean mathematics of risk, return, and legacy. By the time the port was poured, we had a mutual understanding, a joint venture that wouldn't just reshape the waterfront, but would permanently alter the city's economic coastline. His phone hummed softly against the linen. He glanced at it, and a dry chuckle escaped him. Your mother. Extending an invitation to a family dinner next week. She was sure her brilliant daughter would be thrilled to host me. I didn't need to glance at the screen. She was referring to Marilyn. Naturally. Please convey my deepest regrets. I'll be finalizing a deal in Singapore. He stood, taking my hand in a firm grip. You built a fortress while they were watching for a sandcastle. Brittany. Now they have to contend with the fact they never saw the walls going up. Thank you, Jeffrey. But I owe them a debt. There is no greater strategic advantage than being consistently, comprehensively underestimated. Outside, the humid night air was a soft contrast to the restaurant's chill. A black Mercedes, not the Subaru of my family's fixed narrative, waited at the curb. As it glided away from the curb, my phone lit up with a text from my father. Brittany, please. We need to talk. This isn't right. We're family. Period. I stared at the final 2 words. We're family. In their lexicon, it was an incantation, a spell meant to absolve all sins and silence all dissent. In mine, it was a bond that demanded responsibility, a currency they had never spent on me. The lesson had been theirs to teach, and they had been thorough tutors. I opened my laptop, the glow illuminating my face in the dark car. The digital lease agreements for Agglethorpe properties materialized on the screen. I navigated directly to the penthouse unit. The residence of Mr. and Mrs. Harold Carter. This wasn't personal. It was portfolio management. They had taught me that ruthlessness was simply good business. Now, the pupil was ready to review the terms. A week later, the sky over Savannah was a blaze of liquid gold, the sunset painting my office in tones of triumph. The Singapore trip had yielded 3 new deals and 2 global alliances. Yet, the atmosphere now held a charged pressure, the calm before a domestic storm. Martha entered, her demeanor perfectly neutral. They're here. I didn't turn from the window. The main conference room? Yes. Your mother, your father, Marilyn, Mason, and Mr. Lambert. I finally turned. Jeffrey Whitmore? No, Eric Lambert. He was insistent. Claimed his presence was non-negotiable as it's a family matter. A ghost of a sigh might have passed through her. She knew the score. Of course. Some narratives were too comforting for my mother to release. The dizzy daughter, still in need of a suitable husband to manage her sudden, inconvenient fortune. My success hadn't shattered her worldview, it had merely given her a new problem to solve with her old, tired tools. She had summoned the Council of Correction. They were about to learn they were no longer the governing body. The door to the main conference room whispered shut behind me, sealing us in a vault of silence. The space was my design, 12-foot coffered ceilings, walls of glass framing the city, a table of reclaimed oak so massive it felt less like furniture and more like a declaration. This was undisputed territory. My mother sat rigid in a designer sheath dress, a monument to anxious poise. My father appeared weathered, his composure a thin veneer over profound fatigue. Marilyn's fingers were vice-tight around her husband Mason's forearm, as if he were a life raft on a churning sea. And Eric Lambert occupied a chair as if it were a throne, radiating a second-hand confidence that came from a name, not from achievement. Thank you for coming to my office, I said, my voice cool and even as I took the chair at the head of the table. I appreciate you making the time. Time. My mother's word was a sharp exhalation. Brittany, you've vanished. You screen our calls. And now we hear you're in business with Jeffrey Whitmore? This persona isn't you. I permitted a small, closed-lipped smile. It's the only me that's ever existed. You simply preferred the earlier, edited draft. Mason leaned forward, his eyes cold. He'd always fancied himself the family's sharp-minded fixer. We've had people look into your corporate structure. It's a Russian doll of LLCs and holding companies. What are you burying? Nothing, I replied, my hands resting calmly on the table. I'm insulating what's mine. A fundamental lesson, learned young and well. I pressed a discreet button on the console before me. Martha, please send them in. The doors opened. Two men in impeccably tailored suits entered, each carrying a slim, black folder. They took positions against the far wall, silent and observant. Mason's face lost its color. What is this? He demanded, a crack in his bravado. A proactive internal audit, I clarified. A necessary step after a week of persistent cyber intrusion attempts against my company's servers. Yours, Mason, was notable for its lack of sophistication. I opened the folder in front of me. It also constitutes a direct violation of Clause 47B in the Agglethorpe Master Lease, which expressly prohibits any act of corporate espionage against the property owner. Which, as we've established, is me. Marilyn's grip on Mason's arm loosened as she recoiled. Mason? What did you do? It was due diligence, he spluttered, rallying. I was safeguarding the family's assets. The family's assets, I repeated slowly, or your own. I let the question poison the air between us. I know about the sportbook debts, Mason. The failed crypto plays. The way you've been making discreet, monthly withdrawals from Marilyn's irrevocable trust since your second year of marriage. Marilyn turned a stunned face to her husband. Is that true? She's lying, he hissed, his eyes darting. She's always been jealous of what we have. Jealous. Marilyn's laugh was a brittle, broken sound. You've been subsidizing your ego with my inheritance? That is enough. My mother's voice sliced through the room. A command that had once held absolute power. Brittany, this ends now. We are family. I opened a second folder. Family. An interesting concept. Like the calls from concerned citizens to my commercial tenants, urging them to reconsider their leases, or the backchannel warning you tried to send Jeffrey Whitmore, suggesting an association with me was a reputational risk. I shifted my gaze to my father. You were in that meeting. He met my eyes, his own full of a weary justification. We were trying to protect you from overreaching. You don't grasp the complexities, the delicate alliances. No, I said softly, turning to look at the city skyline, my city. It's you who no longer grasps the landscape. I paused, letting the hum of the building fill the space. While you were orchestrating little sabotages, I was constructing unassailable positions. Every deal you tried to poison, I closed. Every client you scared off now answers to me. Eric Lambert chose that moment to lean in, his tone one of condescending reason. See, this is the exact fragmentation I warned about, Brittany. We're stronger consolidated. It's not too late to merge our interests. Merge. I turned my full attention to him, and he had the good sense to blink. You mean, allow you to mismanage and dilute what I've built, as you did with your father's venture capital fund? I held his gaze. Tell me, Eric, does Jeffrey Whitmore know you're here? Does he know you hired a PI to dig into the environmental loopholes on my marina site, hoping to scuttle the deal and steer it to your own group? A deep, blotchy red crept up his neck. My father's opinions are irrelevant. I make my own decisions. I agree. And you've made a poor one. My voice was ice. One call from me, and Jeffrey will know his potential partner's son is actively sabotaging his biggest project. He will sever every tie with Lambert Holdings. Would you like me to demonstrate? Eric's mouth closed. He looked, for the first time, like a boy who'd been caught. I pressed another button. A pristine screen descended silently behind me. With a tap, the room was illuminated with a slide, a cascading financial summary, charts mapping a property empire, architectural renderings of future landmarks. Let me provide a full disclosure, I said, standing beside the glowing data. Agglethorpe was a closing argument, not an opening statement. I advanced the slides, each one a quiet thunderclap. I control 62% of the leasable commercial square footage in the historic district. I own the Orion, the Essex, and the Reverie residential towers. The waterfront regeneration is mine. And the partnership with Whitmore Global is a 51% stake in my favor. The numbers were a language they all understood, and they rendered them speechless. Even my mother stared, her eyes wide, as if seeing a stranger. Marilyn's voice was small amidst the digital glow. But why the secret? Why let us believe you were floundering? I looked at her, my sister. In her face, I didn't see jealousy, but raw terror, the fear of someone who has built her life on a shelf she now realized was fragile. Because the secret was never the point, I said, my voice lowering. The point was the reflection. You needed to see the unedited truth. Not just of my capacity, but of your own character. How swiftly you offered condemnation instead of curiosity. How deeply you trust the surface of things, and how little you value what lies beneath it. I closed the presentation and opened the final, slender folder on the table. The air was crystalline with suspense. Now, we proceed with clarity, I said. The Agglethorpe penthouse lease has reached its natural terminus. Furthermore, Mason's actions constitute a material breach of the covenant of good faith, rendering any familial agreement null and void. I slid fresh documents across the polished oak. For those who wish to remain, these are standard residential leases. Market rates. No concessions. My mother's breath hitched. You cannot seriously intend to evict us. I am offering a new foundation, I corrected. My voice firm yet even. You may stay, but the terms of our relationship must be rewritten. You will treat me as family in its truest sense. Not as a subordinate, not as a project, but as a peer. An equal. The silence was profound, broken only by the whisper of heavy paper as hands turned the lease pages. Marilyn, I said, shifting my tone. It was softer, but no less direct. Carter Holdings has an opening for a vice president of client relations. The role requires diplomacy, insight, and a deep understanding of expectation management. You are uniquely qualified. I held her gaze, seeing the flicker of a person long buried under others' assessments. You possess an acuity you've been persuaded to ignore. You are more than the supporting role you were cast in. The position is yours if you want to claim it. Mason sputtered. Now, wait but Marilyn's hand came up, a swift, decisive gesture he had never seen from her. I am listening, she stated, her eyes not leaving mine. I gave a single nod of acknowledgement, then turned to Eric Lambert. Goldman Sachs does not hold a monopoly on talent or ambition. My international acquisitions division requires strategic navigation. Your network is valuable. I am offering a senior consultancy role. You would have influence, not control. He picked up the offered contract, his earlier bravado replaced by the intense focus of a man reading for his professional life. Mother, I continued, allowing a genuine, small smile to touch my lips. The annual Preservation Gala. Its funding has always been precarious. As of this morning, it is permanently endowed. A legacy gift. From one woman who builds institutions to another who preserves them. She stared, her composure utterly fractured. Her fingers rose absently to her cheek, as if checking her own reality. Mason. Eric. My voice cooled again, becoming administrative. This meeting is concluded for you. The door is there. Your building access credentials were revoked 30 minutes ago. Their protests were immediate, overlapping splutters of outrage and appeal, but the conference room doors had already opened. 2 members of building security stood, calm and immovable, in the entrance. Their exit was swift and wordless. I gathered my own documents. The remaining 3 of you have 24 hours, I said, standing. Not merely to sign a legal document, but to decide upon our architecture. Will we be a family that constructs or one that only knows how to deconstruct? I moved toward the door. I have a working dinner with Jeffrey Whitmore. Marilyn, your perspective would be valuable. Join me, and we can discuss the vision for your department. My hand was on the door handle when I heard the sound of a chair pushing back from the table. I'll get my coat, Marilyn said, her voice clear and quiet. Brittany. My mother's voice stopped me. It was stripped of all its former authority, leaving only a bewildered core. I turned. She gestured vaguely, as if grasping for a tangible flaw in my narrative. The old car, the Subaru. That was all part of the disguise, wasn't it? No, I replied, my answer simple and final. It is my car. A useful reminder that success is not a logo you wear or a vehicle you lease. It is the tangible, lasting value you create. It is what you build. The next morning, dawn streamed into my office, clean and full of promise. Martha entered, placing a perfect cup of coffee beside me. "The signed offer letter from Marilyn is on your desk," she reported. "Your father has requested a call later today to discuss the lease terms. And your mother is in the lower lobby. She asked me to tell you, she is ready to begin her orientation." I looked out over the city, my city, its skyline a testament to ambition and grit. A new structure was forming, not of blood alone, but of choice, respect, and shared purpose. I smiled. "Excellent," I said. "Let's begin." If you believe that true success means dismantling the old playbook and writing a new one, and having the courage to bring your people into the story, consider this your invitation. Brittany Carter's story isn't an ending. It is a foundation. And the first stone is now set.